This is my heater. I dare you to hit it.
He'll be sorry.
Want the heater? I'll give it to you.
Basketball, maybe they don't hit it.
A swing and a drive to deep right.
Clear the deck. Cannonball coming.
Left field. It is out of here.
What is up? Baseball Unstitched. We're back. Evan and Ryan here talking some ball on the week of March 3rd. Crazy that we are here. Yeah, they play real games that count this month. We're there. Flax, how does that sound?
We're so close.
So
I'm so
close.
excited. Spring training is, well, we're going to talk about this today, but spring training is both exciting and, you know, I don't want to call it a letdown, but half the day I'm like, well, you know.
Yeah, we'll get into spring training later. That is going to be one of the topics we hit today. Speaking of spring training, got to go to Sloan Park last weekend.
Yes.
Watched some Cubs versus Guardians baseball. Got to see 3 out of the 4 of the Guardians' 4 horsemen. Tim Herron, dude, looked in mid-season form. I thought he was going to come out and have an immaculate inning. He struck out the first batter of the inning on 3 pitches. And for a hot second, I thought we were about to see something because, dear Lord, was he pinpoint accurate through his one inning of work.
You can't get an immaculate inning without striking out the first batter on 3 pitches. So you were on your way.
Thanks. Appreciate you. That shout out to Cade Smith's father for some comments on Twitter. That was very appreciated. Another guy for the Guardians bullpen who is going to again light it up here in 2025. That fastball at the top of the zone is just mean. I don't even know why anybody tries to hit it. But needless to say, Sloan Park was sick. If you've never gone out there, that's the home of the Chicago Cubs during spring training. Really, really cool place. Enjoyed myself. But let's roll into what we do here, and we're just going to start off with 450 dead center, which is a home run of the week. Flax, who won your home run of the week last week?
I'm going back to college.
Of course you are.
Our guy, Caden Bodine,
Oh, yeah.
generational talent behind the dish. Not only is he a great defensive catcher, but he and Ty Julie went back-to-back for Coastal Carolina, chance up, against Rutgers to walk off. It was an absolute scene there after his walk-off bomb. That team is on the up and up, back on the up and up after winning the College World Series 7-8 years ago. It's exciting to see some of the talent that they've got there. So what about you? Who'd you have this week?
They're ranked 24 in the rankings this week too, by the way, cracking the top 25 for the first time this season.
Yeah, baby.
And Bodine's just like, I don't know. Nothing seems like a big deal to him. It's kind of sick. Like he just hits it and the most casual bat drop ever, gets around the bases, knows he's exciting the crowd. And I don't know. He's an impressive overall prospect. Really excited to see what happens to him this year.
Like I said, his laundry list resume of awards, even pre-college, should tell you he's been there, done that.
Yeah,
with everything and anything. Like that's the baseball world for him.
Very, very impressive. I'm going to go with a little-known guy. He goes by Shohei Ohtani. Not sure if you've heard of him before. He walked into the box in his first debut of spring training and went liftoff immediately. So, yeah, for anybody who's, for some odd reason, waiting for Ohtani to just, like, fall off a map, not going to happen. He's exactly who we thought he was. How about that? Nothing else to say, actually. That's just Ohtani, and I love it. And he hit an absolute nuke in his first debut of spring training.
Oh, I cannot believe I forgot to use my favorite meme of all time when he hit that home run. I don't think I was by my phone, but my favorite meme of the Arizona Cardinals coach saying, they are who we thought they were.
Right.
Yeah. It's exactly.
Wait till he gets on the mound. You can use it then too, because he's not going to look any different than normal.
First strikeout, it's coming. Everybody look out for it.
There you go. You've heard it here first. If he doesn't do it, hold him accountable. Guys, we got some things going on the pod today. So first off, we're going to talk about some contracts. So yeah, soft season's over, but Anthony Rizzo has some really interesting things going on right now. Kind of what I would say the hill he's standing on and one of the main reasons why he hasn't been signed. Came out an interview this week, or article, I'm sorry, Flax might be able to get that right for me, and talk a little bit more about his situation. We're going to parlay that situation with a little Craig Counsell discussion too, something that's already been discussed since he signed that deal with the Cubs, but we're going to talk about the parallels with these two situations and why they're both important. And then finally, we're going to turn it back around and we're going to talk about everybody's favorite roller coaster that is spring training, things that we like about it, things that maybe we think need to be tweaked. And hey, now, are we overreacting for no good reason? We might be, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So moving right into it today, Anthony Rizzo this week came out and basically said he's been offered by a few different teams league minimum contracts. That's been the discussion around him so far. For those of you who don't know, league minimum contracts right now are around $780,000, to put a good mark on it without any dollar cent signs. Rizzo is, making this argument of what I would consider tenure in your workplace, my workplace, Flax's workplace. And that's the fact that, one, Rizzo's made enough. He doesn't have to play on a league minimum contract if he doesn't want to. And he believes his tenure and time in the league and his overall service time should be worth more than that general base league minimum rookie type contract of which he's being offered. I think there's some validation to what he's saying, and Flax and I wanted to dig into that. But Flax, first, your overall thoughts and comments on the situation, and if you want to go into a little bit deeper of exactly what this is.
Yeah. So, I saw Ken Rosenthal. He wrote an article with The Athletic and a conversation with Anthony Rizzo about this, and Rizzo's comments basically were, a team should be able to offer a couple $1 million or a few $1 million for a guy with his tenure and what he's done in the league and what he's accomplished and the level that he's played at for 9 of the 11 years or 10 of the 12 years that he's been a big leaguer, which is a pretty good chunk of time to perform at that level outside of a couple injury-marred seasons the last 2 years. So, you're looking at a guy with $135 million in career earnings. He's got a $6 million paycheck this year just in a buyout from the Yankees. So realistically, he doesn't need to play for league minimum. I personally don't disagree with him. I think when you look at the situation, there's plenty of guys in history that have just kind of ended their careers pretty slowly like this because they didn't get the contract they were supposed to get at the age they were supposed to get. We talk about Brandon Belt all the time. Brandon Belt had a little bit of injury issues with his back towards the end of his career, but was still like an 850 OPS guy, which plenty of teams would take as a left-handed platoon bat at first base, hitting 250, 300 at-bats a year, but they're not going to pay him what he thinks his value is, similar to Rizzo, and so he's just not going to keep doing the thing. And he doesn't need to. There's plenty of guys that you'll see do this. And we may look at it and say, well, you get to play a kid's game, right? In our job, you're lucky to make whatever, $60,000, $70,000, $100,000 a year. And this is a guy saying he's not going to take $780,000 a year to do what you would love to do. But again, like you mentioned, Ryan, if you're in your job for 10, 12 years and someone says, hey, we want you to take a 90% pay cut, or whatever, a 70% pay cut just for the love of doing the thing that you're doing, you want to do it? The answer is probably going to be no. Especially over that time period, you've made enough money to feel secure in the rest of your lifestyle, which is kind of where he's at. So that's kind of the broad spectrum of the situation, my viewpoint of it. But I know we want to dig into a little bit more of the discussion and the facts around it for Rizzo's conversation specifically.
Yeah, and while we're here, one thing that Flax and I try to do, and you see us do it on a consistent basis, is contextualize these problems towards what all of us see in our daily lives and on a daily basis. And for anybody who doesn't feel like it's important to bring it back to that, we do have to stop and remember the age-old adage of, it's a business. And the truth of the matter is it is. So we have to think about it like that. League minimum to them might be like a sales rep coming in and working for somewhere for $45,000 for the first time that they've gotten an opportunity to have a job, as an example of a general thought process, right? That's not going to be everywhere, but that's a $45,000 out of college for a younger person is probably a relative general average, depending on where you're in the country. I'm probably not that far off. So you have to look at those league minimum contracts in the same way you'd look at that first sales job, professional HR job, wherever you want to go with this. That's how you have to look at the league minimum salary for these players. And so the next piece that we wanted to talk about was something Tommy Pham said recently, which I thought was great. The interview was talking about how Tommy Pham has been able to find work in Major League Baseball over the last 4 to 6 years by bouncing around teams. He's played for, Flax, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's 6 teams in the last 4 years. There is just always a place for Tommy Pham on a roster. But the point that Tommy Pham made actually really overlays into this Rizzo conversation well. And Pham said when he first got into the league, the average Major League service time of a player was 5.5 years. And as of last year, 2024, it was under 3 years. So what does that just tell us from an overarching perspective? It is getting harder and harder and harder to stay in Major League Baseball. Teams are really willing to push guys in and through the organization. And if you don't perform, you don't have a job in Major League Baseball. So let's stop. Again, contextualizing back to what we do. It's no different for us. If we go into work every day, we don't perform at a high enough level, we don't generally have a job. It's just how the world works. Major League Baseball is catching up and catching up and catching up. The baseball fraternity is very obviously no longer just saving guys and allowing them to play for longer periods of time. So that rolls back to what Rizzo said. All of a sudden, all that tenure that Rizzo has of 11 years of Major League service time, it does legitimately have value to it. And Pham's point, I think, points to that. So again, it's just very interesting. And Flax, I guess, I'm not sure if you have a point on that either, but
it's very clear. Yeah, it's very clear that the league doesn't have intent to service veterans at the same rate that it has intent to service rookies and younger players. If you look at the way the CBA is built, there are less stipulations and less things within the agreement that focus on making sure veterans are paid while playing. Most stipulations for veterans are focused on post-playing situations like pension, retirement funds, health care. You want to reach that 10-year service mark for a lot of those types of things. It's very rare that you want to reach that service time so that you hit like a much higher minimum salary, which like in football. In football, there are different minimum salary levels, both practice squad and for active roster, based on your years of service. And that number goes up substantially. In baseball, it's the difference between rookie and veteran status of like $40,000 or $50,000 at league minimum, which is not a lot. You can't have an Anthony Rizzo on the bench with a truly storied 10, 12-year career next to a guy who just broke in making the same amount of money. It doesn't make sense. And so you just won't get guys like Rizzo playing, especially when you have systems like arbitration set up for those young guys to make what their value dictates they make against a smaller portion of guys, right? Anthony Rizzo's value should be based against the smaller portion of veterans at his level that do still exist and can still perform, which is why and it happens on the pitching side, which is funny to me, right? Like there's a reason why Charlie Morton, Alex Cobb, Justin Verlander, and Max Scherzer all 4 signed for the same amount of money, all signed $15 million contracts. There is a standard for guys at the 40 to 42-year-old range.
Or there's a standard it's happening. The standard
that's starting to happen of we want a guy who was a former number 1, former number 2, turn into a now number 4, number 5, is going to throw strikes, is going to compete, and is going to teach our young guys how to throw while being in the rotation. Teach them how to do the every 5 days thing. And that's a price that's worth paying at what we're now seeing is somewhere in the range of $10 to $15 million. It doesn't seem that still exists for hitters, or the number is just far lower. And they're trusting that there's enough hitters out there that just want to be a part of the game of baseball that are just willing to sign, right? But there's no reason in my mind why a guy like Andrew McCutchen is going to sign for $5 million and put up probably the same offensive production as a guy like Anthony Rizzo could. Granted, their defensive positions are different. I understand that. There's also the piece of Andrew McCutchen and the Pittsburgh Pirates having the relationship they do. There are intangibles here that exist. But that doesn't mean a guy like Anthony Rizzo wouldn't help a team making $4 to $5 million. And 3/4 of the league, more than that, are well under the luxury tax limit and could afford it without hurting themselves with future penalties.
And as we talk about some contractual comparisons, I know the two that we discussed were Andrew McCutchen and, ironically, Gary Sanchez here. But part of the thing that we want to remind people before we dive deeper into this is that Rizzo's been dealing with a head injury for the last year and a half. Let's stop and remember that there are other things than just all of a sudden he can't hit, right? Coming back from anything is going to take time. It's going to take more time when you're a little bit older. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt, especially that 2024 was by no means us seeing Anthony Rizzo at anywhere close to his best, even at his elevated age. So we have to remember that.
Also, just around that same point real quick, this is a guy who's a career 260 hitter. The last 2 years he hit around, 210, still had a little bit of power while dealing with a head injury. There are guys who get head injuries.
Very good defense.
Yes. There are guys who get head injuries and can't hit above 100. It's not that he's a bad hitter. It's not that he forgot how to hit at a major league level. He's just struggling with injuries. But I have a feeling that if he gets signed this year, you're going to see a much better player. And he knows that too, which is part of his argument of, I'm not going to sign for league minimum and do a prove it year in year 12.
Yeah.
Which I don't disagree with.
And I can't blame him. I don't think he's wrong. This is where the discussion kind of hits a point, and I think it's good for me to stop and say that right now. So we talked about how there seems to be a precedent forming for previously high-end pitchers and the money that they'll be able to garner as a 4 or a 5 who can then help the young guys on the staff really develop and mature. What does that precedent look like for aging hitters, right? Position players. And that, to me, as kind of stated, is where Rizzo is going with this. He's a tenured player. He's put his time in. He's produced at a high level. The knowledge of which he's gained throughout those years and what he brings to a dugout in a clubhouse, regardless of his offensive performance, is probably worth more than what you're paying a rookie who may or may not be on the roster the year after. So we kind of talked about what will be fair, what do they do. Now, this goes into CBA 2026, what's coming up. That's already a stressful conversation for everybody who enjoys and loves baseball. But something of the nature of after you hit 10 years of service time, which right now one of the main benefits that players get is after they get X amount of service time, they get automatic no trade clauses, something many people do not know. That 10 years of service time, one of the things it does for you while you are in the league is when you sign a deal, it gives you a no trade clause. Awesome. Great. However, there's no reason why a new CBA couldn't have some type of service time change as it pertains to the minimum you're allowed to play a player. Let's talk about that. Let's say the minimum becomes $2 million for a guy who has over 9.5 years of service time. I don't know. I'm just throwing out a number. The problem that Flax brought up, and I think it's worth mentioning, is, okay, now do teams just decide they're going to be more willing to bring up the younger hitters who they think can produce at the same level rather than ever signing a veteran? Is that going to shorten service time and careers for people? We don't know the answer to that. However, it builds all back to the precedent that's being set. And I think that's really where we're going with this is, what do you as a fan believe is a fair number for these guys who have more tenure? Because the reality is, and Flax and I do agree on this, is they have deserved something more. Yes, I get it. They're playing a kid's game and they're making X amount of millions of dollars. Fine. But you just can't look at it that way because that's not how this business operates. And for most of us, if we were in that scenario, I don't believe we'd feel any different.
This is why, by the way, hitters are working exponentially harder in the offseason during free agency periods to get contracts that are going to take them to the age of 37, 38.
Yeah, we've been talking about why guys won years this entire time. You are absolutely correct. There's not a single player in baseball who wants to have their name in the conversation we are having right now, especially guys who are tenured stars. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. signing anything under than a 12-year deal would shock me next year. Would shock me, right?
Yep.
These guys who are very good players are going to lock up their bag for as long as humanly possible moving forward. You're starting to see younger guys try to lock in a bag earlier. We have to remember, as much as we love the Bobby Witts, the Cheerios, nothing is given, especially in this game. Injuries happen. Like, anything can happen. So whatever you need to do to find the guaranteed money on that contract and the length to make sure that you have an ability to play and show what you can do is very important.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's round this to a different precedent that was set in last offseason, and that is for Craig Counsell. And that pairs very well into this discussion because where Rizzo is trying to set what I consider a floor precedent for older hitters prior to signing because he's trying to get their worth, managers in Major League Baseball have historically have not had disclosed contracts. Their contracts are not required to be disclosed by the CBA or anything of that nature, as they're part of the CBA, but it's not full and it depends on if you played. There's a lot of different stipulations that go into this. So last offseason, as many people know, Craig Counsell jumped from the Milwaukee Brewers to the Chicago Cubs. It stirred a whole shitstorm for everybody because those are obviously interdivision rivals. And Counsell came out himself and said, yeah, 5 years, $40 million. Got paid. And I really feel like the discussion was, gosh, we're really mad that he left the Brewers and went to the Cubs, and then the Cubs weren't as good as people thought. Lost in the mess is what he did for other managers in baseball. And what is that? He set a record, what we probably believe to be a record contract precedent. Now that he's said it out loud, Flax, what does that allow other managers to do?
That's now your asking price. That is now your floor as a manager who has taken a team to the playoffs, taken a team that is not necessarily exactly what you think they're going to be, and then they turn into something better. Because that's what he did, right? Like, that's what he did to earn the contract. Nothing more.
Once.
Yeah,
twice.
But realistically, nothing more, right? This isn't a guy who won 3 straight World Series. This isn't a guy who, did this major transformation. He had actually really good talent on that team, built good culture in the clubhouse, and took them to the playoffs, which they were probably already going to do because then Pat Murphy came in and they did it again. But that aside, right? Like, Craig Counsell set a new floor for managers to be able to go in and set their asking price as long as they have met pretty median requirements as a manager. And I think the beauty of that is he also, by making it public, made it more common or maybe more comfortable for future managers to do the same. I think the reason why teams and managers have held it so close to the vest for so long is because managers kind of come and go. It's very different from players. Players get guaranteed money, and then there's this idea of, well, we're kind of stuck with this guy, or this guy's got to play this position, or this guy's got to do this thing because we gave him all this money to do this thing. Well, if the Cubs don't make the playoffs again next year, and he's got 3 years left on his deal with the Cubs, are people going to be calling for his head? Well, I don't know, maybe, but you still got to pay him $24 million if you're going to let him go. It's guaranteed money. So now that's out there, it changes the conversation about how you treat managers and how owners and managers have to work together and how the GM and the manager have to work together to build something long term. And you don't see that as often. You look at the way the White Sox are totally changing things around. It's been a carousel of managers since Ozzie Guillen. And you also notice that it's been a carousel of players and developmental changes and efforts with that organization trying to just find the pieces that work well together in a very short stint. And now that Chris Getz has taken over, they're shifting that mentality and everyone's in it together. And there's a clear long-term plan that they're trying to make all the way from the manager to the players to the developmental staff to the front office to the analytics team. And that's why we think they're going to be good going forward. But that's what Craig Counsell does. He sets all of those things in motion where teams totally start to shift the way that they enter into relationships with their managers going forward. Not even from a financial perspective, but from the long-term contract. This is why we're in it. This is what we're doing with it. And this is what we expect of you.
And you got to look at it in context, too, of things that have happened this year. A week and a half ago, Aaron Boone signed a 2-year extension. Now, like days of old, we don't know the money attached to his 2-year extension, being on the fact that he's the manager of the New York Yankees, an organization that it took them till this year to let people even have a beard. We're not going to sit here and act like we're surprised that we don't know what Aaron Boone is getting paid. However, if anybody thinks Aaron Boone and his agent did not put the Craig Counsell contract in front of the Yankees and say, we've been pretty good the last couple of years. We haven't turned it over, but things are going the right direction. The culture in the clubhouse is good. We've made a lot of strides. Frankly, you're crazy, because would almost guarantee that they did. So this is kind of where we're going with it. There is a lot of different things that are going to be set, and this will follow into, as we move through this year and we move through next year, the conversations that are going to be had around this CBA and how it's going to change things for players, contracts, and baseball in general, right? Again, keep in mind, everybody, Aaron Boone, part of the Players Association. He formerly played Major League Baseball. Craig Counsell, part of the Players Association. These things will all relate back to themselves in some way, shape, or form. Flax and I had a discussion about whether or not we thought the managers might have their own type of unionization, things like that. We're not going to go down that road right now. It doesn't mean it's not possible. Part of our thought process there is because they probably fall under the banner of the players at some point in time moving forward, especially because almost half of them, if not more, are already part of that association in some way, shape, or form to begin with. So either way.
You might have been about to get to this, so I apologize. I do want to circle back around to the dichotomy of the Counsell contract and the discussion of what he's doing and Anthony Rizzo. Because a lot of people look at Anthony Rizzo and they say, go play. But he's doing for guys that are in his situation, going to be in his situation, and if he can get the right contract, he's doing for those future players what Craig Counsell is doing for all the managers that come after him. And they're going to be up for contract renewal. A guy like Aaron Boone. That's what Anthony Rizzo's doing right now. And as much as you think that he shouldn't stand on his high horse or stand on his pedestal or stand on his soapbox and do these things, he's in the best position to possibly do this. He's making $6 million this year, not even touching a bat. And he's made $135 million in his career to begin with up to this point. So there is no need for him to take league minimum just to get to do the thing. It's the perfect position to say, I'm valuable. Somebody's going to need me. When they pay me, the next guy behind me can point to me and say, well, Anthony Rizzo got $3.5–4 million. I am also a first baseman who is 36 years old, and I also want $3–4 million, not $780,000.
By the way, I've been around the league for a while, and there's a reason why my tenure is worth it. Right? Listen, guys, the big example here is, and you can quote me on this right now, we'll wait till 2028 to have the discussion, but if you think Christian Walker is not looking at Anthony Rizzo right now after signing a 3-year deal and saying this is important, you're crazy. Wow, I've said that.
If you think that Christian Walker's production is going to continue going up and to the right, I'm not saying he's going to do bad.
No.
I think he's going to be great, and his spring training's already off to a hot start. But natural regression to the mean as a player, as he gets closer to 36, 37 years old, will start to plateau. But if he can still be a strong right-handed bat and a DH for somebody at 37 years old...
He will need to be. He's so good defensively.
So they say.
I knew you were going to say that. again, rounding it out, very interesting discussion. We hope you guys enjoy that topic. That's something that we've had a lot of talks about this week. If you get an opportunity, I would highly suggest watching the short snippet from Tommy Pham's interview. It was very interesting to listen to Pham talk about service time and how he's been able to stay in the league and what he expects young players need to do to get there and what that looks like. And on top of it, of course, highly suggest reading Heyman's article with Ken Rosenthal's article, with Anthony Rizzo. Heyman, New York, you know how it goes. My bad.
It's all the same.
No, that's it. All right, let's move into our next topic before somebody says bring back steroids. And our next topic is a little bit of spring training.
Wait till the final thoughts.
It is always fun to see fan reactions towards spring training, what's going down, how they feel about it, things that people like to say week 1 of spring training compared to right before the season starts. So gonna run right into this, and I want to start this with things that Flax and I pay attention to during spring training. And my hope with this is we give you a good molded understanding of things that you can watch out for that may help you better project what's going to happen this season for your team, where they're at. And, the couple things we talk about early in spring training, it's our impression and understanding, and I feel very confident in this, that most hitters are going to be sitting around and making sure they're hitting the fastball. Their focus is going to be hitting the fastball. Why is that? Well, there's a couple reasons. First 2 weeks of spring training, most pitchers are trying to do what? Locate a fastball. They haven't done it all year in this type of setting with fans at game levels of intensity. For anybody who's played, you understand that statement. It is different to be on the hill just doing live in practice than it is being on the hill in a game. The intensity level changes. So early in spring training, be watching for hitters' approach. Taking good ABs and letting go breaking balls that are not in the zone because you're focused on hitting a fastball and you're focused on getting a pitch is something you'll see. I said to Flax in the second game of spring training for the Nationals, hey, we're going to be great this year if we take at-bats that look like the first 12 ABs of the game. Had nothing to do with the result. Absolutely. They happened to have good result, but the ABs that the Nationals hitters were taking was what made that something that gets me excited for particularly my team's season. We start there. Flax, tell everybody a little bit more about pitch mix and what they're looking for in pitchers early in spring training and what's really happening with them.
Yeah, I think it's good for people to understand, and you kind of mentioned this, pitchers are finally getting in front of live hitters with fans around in a game situation, with base runners, all those extra pieces that exist that you kind of have to block out and still focus on executing a pitch. So what are they doing? Guys are adding new pitches. Guys are focused on locating certain pitches. Guys may not care about the pitch mix at all. They're just following the instructions of the catcher, and they're focused on their mechanics and the body process. That's how we feel about the first couple of weeks. As we start to see pitchers start to get lengthened out, and we start to see guys get siphoned off a little bit and sent down to the minors, and we get more of the expected 26-man roster pitchers, we start to worry more about pitch mixes, how they're sequencing, what they're trying to throw, what stays in the arsenal of what they worked on all offseason, and what doesn't stay in it. The situation I love to use, and it came up very recently, was Kumar Rocker in his first outing. We didn't see the death ball one time. And everybody was like, why isn't he throwing the death ball? And my comment to it, and I had a conversation with somebody on Twitter about this, was because he doesn't need to. He's working on 2 other pitches and trying to get those in sync with his body, with a live hitter in that situation. And the response was, yeah, but not even one. The guy threw 17 pitches. Why would he throw 1 death ball if he's not going to throw 5? Mixing 1 in there just to get it out doesn't matter as much as working on the pitches he wants to work on and potentially walking 2 guys and none of those results mattering. First couple of weeks. As we start to get into next week and probably the week after, if we don't see Kumar Rocker throwing the death ball, then we have questions.
Red flag.
Then we're wondering what's going on there, why he doesn't want to throw it. My guess is that's not going to be the case, and we're going to see him throw it no problem. But that's why guys aren't throwing pitches that they know how to throw. If you've got a 50, 60 grade pitch, you know how to throw it in your sleep. Corbin Burns' cutter. Corbin Burns, if he didn't want to throw his cutter all spring training, could go out there in game 1 and throw cutter for first pitch of the game, and it'd be one of the nastiest cutters you've seen in your entire life. He knows how to hold the ball. He knows how to come through the pitch. He knows how to spot it up wherever he wants. But if his curveball's not working the way he wants it to, his two-seam's not working the way he wants it to, you're going to see way more of that in spring training. That's what this is for. So,
totally agree. And I think the only thing to add, too, is the opposite effect you'll see sometimes, which is you'll see a lot of guys narrow their arsenal down in a shorter outing so that they can get more work in game intensity on pitches they want to work with. You also see, for some pitchers, you see the opposite happen. I believe Seth Lugo threw 9 different pitches in his first outing, right? Like, I have a feeling if we looked at Yu Darvish's outings, he'd probably be the same way. There is the flip side of some guys are just out there in game intensity getting feel for all of their pitches, even if they're ones that they may use 1% of the time. There is just a lot of different things to go into it. And where we're going with this for everybody who's watching their teams and is stressed out about what's happening, this is a time of the year where, gosh, unless a guy is just doing absolutely nothing positive, looking at the production results over the at-bat, what they're doing and why they're doing it will not help, in my opinion, you get ready for the season that your team may or may not have, right? We should absolutely get excited about really positive outings. Tidewell, one of the, I believe it's Blade.
Tidwell.
I'm going to be wrong.
Blade Tidwell.
Blade. Oh, it's got a sick name. Blade Tidewell. He threw an immaculate inning for the Mets. As a Mets fan, get excited about that, guys. I don't care if it's spring training. That's hard to do, right? So we're not asking you to dumb down your expectations, your thoughts. It's very important that you as a fan also know the process that these guys are going through to get ready to have what hopefully is a successful season, no matter who you're rooting for. Let's flip this now into some things about spring training that maybe frustrate us a little bit, maybe get us a little stressed about. And I can tell you some of our good friends on Twitter, specifically running from the ops, would really love to see changed about Major League Baseball and our Major League Baseball spring training. And the first one is, not every game or park is equipped for StatCast. Yeah, we'll just be quiet about it. You guys can fill in the noise. I mean, it doesn't make any of us happy.
I think this is purposeful. I think this is purposeful and not for the reasons that people want to talk about. I think the cost and complexity of adding it into the stadium is a cop-out. Every team can afford it. Every team could implement it. Every team had an offseason to put it in place. StatCast is not new.
The MLB could afford it as a group and say we want it everywhere.
Right. And I understand. I see it all over Twitter. I understand it. I love the cards that everybody's making of all the outings that everybody has. That being said, understand that when a pitcher comes off the mound in an outing in spring training, the last thing he's looking at in a park with it or without it is that data. Because for all the teams that don't have it in their park, they have it in every bullpen, they have it in every batting cage, and they have it in all the places where they want to developmentally work on that stuff and have that informational feedback. When you're in a game, and in a game scenario, and your effort is more focused around sequencing, spotting pitches, and pitching in a scenario with runners on base, not on base, all of that, none of those numbers matter. Your stuff either works or it doesn't. It has nothing to do with the spin rates and the induced vertical break that your ball does or doesn't have. There's also different scenarios where guys, especially on the Colorado Rockies, almost don't care because it's not going to be that way at Coors. So you have to learn how to do much better about actually pitching and not focus so much on throwing and meeting certain numbers. That being said, as a fan, I wish we had the data. It really annoys me when I open up the game day app and a game's not on TV, and I can't even see where a pitch is thrown in the zone because the stadium doesn't have the ability to show me that in the MLB at-bat app. I'm totally on board with that. But there is a reason for it. There are teams that don't want their players necessarily focusing on it or knowing that it exists in the realm of taking game focused reps.
So my pushback is I honestly don't care about it for the pitchers. I know they have it. Everybody and their mom has it. I want the StatCast data on how many times did Christian Campbell barrel a ball today. I want to know. I want to know from a hard hit rate perspective in spring training, where is Dylan Cruz right now? I want to know, does Braden Montgomery look like the guy we think he is from a general StatCast perspective? Now, the argument, it is very simple here, is we're not even going to have enough at bats for that to matter. And I think that's probably the argument part of it. But go ahead.
I have two arguments, and that is one of them. But are you saying that as a fan, or are you saying that as Ryan, the GM, or Ryan, the bench coach? Because I'll tell you who doesn't need StatCast to tell him whether or not he barreled up all of his balls in all of his at-bats. Christian Campbell. Christian Campbell doesn't need to see numbers to know whether or not he's not going to.
This is all as the fan. I'm not here to deny it.
Then that's fair. Then that's a fair argument.
That too is that's part of building the brand of baseball.
Yes,
I'll be the first one to tell you that me knowing X prospects hard hit rate over 30 spring training at bats tells me nothing. It tells me absolutely nothing. Why it's not a big enough sample size. That's how data works. However, as a fan, getting to know that one of my top prospects is having one hell of a spring training, production-wise, I can see it when I watch him and the StatCast data lines up, gets you excited to watch Major League Baseball. And what do we need right now? Fans excited to watch Major League Baseball.
So I want to bring a guy up because this is an important topic. Last year, 45 at bats. This guy hit 311 in spring training. He had 2 home runs, 2 triples, 3 doubles, scored 6 runs. Do you know who I'm talking about? Probably not. Jackson Holliday had a very good spring training through 15 games last year. What did he do? Didn't start at the big league club, had a pretty lackluster first trip to the big leagues. We've said this forever. We've been saying this since spring training started. It's for the game of baseball. It is good to know that these stats exist. It's good to have the data. It just doesn't translate. Sometimes it does, right? Chris Bryant led the MLB in home runs the year before he came up in spring training.
Sample size. That's fair.
Right.
I don't disagree. But again, I think for the sake of how people watch and digest baseball now, I think for baseball, having the availability of stats like this to fans is what's really important, right?
Probably.
Again, if you ask me to put my GM hat on, you're correct. Do not give a rat's butt what anybody has to say in a 30 AB stint. I don't really care production, and I don't really care StatCast. If I'm being completely honest with you, can you play yourself on a team like that in the right way, in the right situation, and deserve it? Absolutely. I'm not here fighting it. 2 years ago, Jordan Walker, one of the better prospects in all of baseball, he hit like 6 home runs in spring training. He looked like the next Babe Ruth, gets up to the major league level, has a 12-game hit streak, and then falls off the map. There's nothing wrong with Jordan Walker. And by the way, let me remind everybody right now before I go any farther, he's like 23 right now. So if you're out on Jordan Walker, please
he'll be
stop.
all right.
Please stop. He was born after 2000. He's young enough. We'll be fine. But the point I make is exactly what you're getting at. I agree that the production metrics, and from, a general manager's perspective, these things really don't matter because they have the data that they need and they have the data that matters. Fans, though, we enjoy this crap. We sit around and we talk about stats all day long, right? And we talk about the at-bats somebody had, and we talk about how hard they hit the ball, and it allows for speculation that is very entertaining and is good for the sport.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right. There's absolutely a piece there that I think for the fans' sake, it would be great to have it in all ballparks. The MLB definitely should make it standard. I would be shocked if by the time we got to next year it wasn't, to be quite honest with you.
I'd agree. I think they're on the right path.
Only 2 of the ballparks that the Orioles play in spring training don't have it. It just happens to be that one of those stadiums is their own, and so that's half of their games.
You seem so upset.
It doesn't. I mean, of all people, it just doesn't bother me.
I know.
I know. But again, that's who I am, and everybody who listens to this knows what half of this podcast I am. Like I know that the players are getting what they need from playing those games, and I'm happy about that. And great, I got to watch baseball today.
You did. I will hope to watch baseball sometime this evening. Either way, we wrap the whole conversation here. More of an entertaining thing for us to talk about it. The spring training, ladies and gentlemen, is full of overreactions. It's full of stress and excitement and everything. My one suggestion that I think Flax would agree with is sit back, enjoy the baseball. Your team wins, loses, ties. It doesn't matter. Look for good ABs and try to pay attention to what pitchers are really working on and trying to get done, and you will have a good spring training experience.
Yeah.
Past that.
Can't say the rest for your mental health once the 162 starts.
Oh,
we are
boy.
absolutely in the camp of letting our emotions run with our team's success. So hand up. That absolutely is us.
Get excited. Get excited. If we go off the air, it's because I'm in a padded cell because the Nats aren't doing what they're supposed to do. We'll worry about that later, though. That'll be my final thought. Flax, I know you have a final thought, and if you say bring back steroids, steroids, I'm kicking you off.
No. My final thought for today is everybody go ride the wave.
We are
getting on the train. We are riding the train. We are hopping on Roll Bows, the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, coming after that Big West Championship this year, starting out very hot. This is Monday night that we're recording. I will be up for Bows After Dark, 9:30 Mountain Time, start time on ESPN Plus. But hopefully they'll actually be on TV, not just radio next weekend. And it'll be, you can watch it late at night on a night when, it's not a school night. I still think of things in that way. A work night? I don't know. My mom will be happy to hear that.
We love ourselves some West Coast, really far out West Coast baseball is really what the season is turning into, guys. I mean, we're both East Coast guys, and we've talked more about UCSB, Stanford, and Rainbow Warriors baseball than anybody else. Maybe Tennessee gets the sprinkled shout out in there, but I just reminding everybody we're from Maryland. We have no reason to do this.
Come on now. We got the Midwest baseball in there.
Denison baseball, baby. You're right.
Denison baseball's in there. 5-1 through the first 2 weekends. Solid start to the year.
We like some D3 baseball in this pod. We're gonna have Flax start shouting out a little bit more.
Yeah, we'll find it. We'll find our stride.
Only thing I've got for this week is Caden Kent might be the best second baseman in all of college baseball after the night he had last night. Yes, Caden Kent is the son of former big league superstar Jeff Kent. So yeah, I don't know. Go watch him hitting nukes. He was doing it it's not even Minute Maid Park anymore, is it? What is it?
No, it's Dakin Park.
Dakin Park,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
it'll be Minute Maid Park in my heart forever.
Had 2 nukes last night for Texas A&M, who has finally righted the ship there offensively, or at least it looked like they did last night. So
yeah,
I don't know, guys. Watch college baseball, but Major League Baseball is on its way back, and we will do our best to cover a little bit of college baseball in the meantime, and we're having a lot of fun watching those prospects right now. Past that, have a great week. Tell us what home runs we should talk about. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You guys pick our home run of the week. But we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep bat flipping every time we can get a chance. And Tomahawk Talk, our men's league baseball bet is on, and we're going to say it live on the podcast.
We're coming for you.
We're ready to swing the bat. And if you guys want to see what we believe to be good baseball swings, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, all of the socials. Come hang out with us. Come have a good time. We do our best.